And I have had the great fortune of gathering three other women who, although their bios may not say that, although they may not say that in those words, that is their mission too. And I felt it was important to have this conversation to just sort of hear how women who identify differently, women who come from different backgrounds, how they're impacted by this thing that we call patriarchy. So I want to thank Lucy for helping me organize this, and I want to thank again all of you for coming out. So here's how this is going to work. We will discuss four very specific topics, and it'll be sort of a free-form discussion. Each woman will share her story, her perspective. We're going to end and open it up to anyone in the audience who has a question either for us about something we said, or if during our conversation thoughts came up for you, commentaries, similarities that you want to share with the group. I want to say this to our brethren. All of our men in the room, I want to congratulate you for being wise enough to come to this discussion. It is terribly important that we have these conversations, and the narrative around these conversations are created and shaped by women. And the fact that you are here means that you understand this is important for you to hear. When we open it up for Q&A, if you have a question, if you have a comment, you are more than welcome to share that. But I'm going to ask you for a small favor. I'm going to ask you to ask yourself from where that question or comment is coming. If it's coming from a place of curiosity and clarification, and I want to know more about this person's story, thank you. Ask that question. And be honest with yourself to see if that question or comment is coming from another place, which is a place of discomfort, a place of fear. And if you want to sort of present that question or comment from a place of that, in that foundation, just self-monitor to see if you want to have that discussion here today, because we are not gathered here today just to have that discussion. So thank you for coming, and we appreciate your wanting to hear, particularly about our perspectives in the 21st century, and you are open to share your commentary and questions as well. So let's start with our panelists. I have to my left here, Faye. Faye is one of the organizers of the Lady Fest Shanghai. Let's give her a hand. If you're unfamiliar with the Lady Fest Shanghai, it is a festival, a grassroots arts festival, in which ladies share their artistic works and their discussions and workshops surrounding gender equality and other such issues. She has been an organizer of this festival since it's begun, and it'll be coming up. I'm sorry, am I wrong?
Yeah, since the year before.
Okay. 2017. Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry about that, Faye. And she is very passionate about particularly issues of sexual harassment in the workplace and equality of women and their choices being given the same amount of weight as choices that are often made in a more traditional setting. So thank you for joining us, Faye. We have Lilian. Lilian, y'all ain't ready for Lilian. I'm just going to say that. Lilian is one of the most dynamic women I have met since I've been here in Shanghai. I've been here for about 3 years. And she specifically works with the trans and queer communities here in Shanghai. She is the co-founder of Queer Talks. She's also the co-founder of Women Up. And both of these organizations seek to raise awareness, particularly about marginalized groups of people here in China, and how to give voice to their inequalities, how to help them with very specific needs that come about because of their marginalization. And she has some very, very good perspectives on what it means when you live outside of the gender norm. So thank you for joining us today, Lilian. And finally, we have Niesha. Niesha is way more humble than she should be. She is a writer. She's a traveler. She is a content creator. She is a thought leader on issues, particularly that meet at the intersection of race, gender, and sexuality. She writes a lot on the topics of feminism, on the topics of issues that impact those who identify as queer. She has written for Bitch Magazine. She has written for The Establishment, The Sixth Tone. She has been featured on Al Jazeera's The Stream, again, giving her commentary on life at those intersections. So as you can see, we are going to have quite an engaging, insightful conversation. And if anything comes up throughout the conversation, please feel free to bring it up to us when we have our Q&A. So we're going to start with a topic that means a lot to me. It's the topic of motherhood. And that topic is important to me because I have chosen not to be a mother. I'll be 44 in June, and I have not given birth intentionally for a number of reasons. We're at a time period where if you ask a woman, do you want to have children? Your getting a yes to that question is not necessarily a guarantee. Where several generations ago, as recently as my mother's generation, it was sort of a given that that is exactly the answer you would get. I did a little research. The fertility rate in the US has decreased. It's been the lowest it's been in generations, 1.75. And if you guys can correct me, China, it relaxed its one-child policy a few years ago, correct? But there are some provinces in China that are trying to incentivize women to actually have just one child, where they're willing to offer special school fees and services because the birth rate is still declining. So this issue of women not becoming mothers is increasing across the globe. I have my own perspective on why that might be, but I'm curious because every woman on this stage is not a mother. So I'm curious about what your perspective is on why you think there is a declining birth rate throughout, not just necessarily in one particular country.
Well, the medical technology has been increasing, so less children are dying when they are born. So, of course, the fertility rate will be dropping, and also the birth control technology that has given us the choice whether we want to have want to have a child or not. That's the second. Of course, that would be a reason where women, they are having more education and they are having a career. So their mission in life is not only to give birth, whereas it's true back in China. And also, I think because the life expense is increasing, and it's really relating to the economy. So I guess that's why now even the China government is trying to encourage people to have more children to address the issues of aging population, but it's not taking effect yet.
I think women in China, I think all over the world, but specifically in China, you've gone through a lot of changes in the past, few decades. And I talked to my mom. I came out to my mom recently, and I told her I didn't want children.
Can I pause you for one quick second?
Yeah.
So you are clear. It's not a if the right circumstance happens, if you just, no matter what the circumstances, you do not want to have children.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I told them. I
Okay.
just didn't want to. And it's a big deal in China because family is such a huge virtue, right? Carrying on the family heritage and all of these things. I had a speaker once say when he came out to his mom as gay, she was like, it's okay, as long as you find someone you love, right? But then when he came out as someone who didn't want to have children, might not even want to have a family and just be single, it blew her mind, So it is a big deal to families to say that, and to have that opinion. And my mom's response, at first she wasn't happy. She said, I want you to have kids because I want you to not be alone when you're old. Which is, she's trying to have my the best intentions in mind. And then she said, but I understand because I still feel lonely now. And she said she's disappointed. And I think it's because society's changed so fast for women. We're now part of the we're part of the system now. We're allowed to work. We're allowed to have these part of this capitalist system. But at the same time, we don't have. We still have the same values of being the mother. Right, and then we also have to have a career, and then we have to have all the things in order to succeed, right? And all that expectation, sometimes you feel disappointed with the choices you've made, and I feel like that's why she understands my perspective. That being said, I think if you want to be a mother, I think that's totally up to you, and that's a totally great thing to choose, as long as that choice is yours and not your family, not the government, not someone else who tells you that's what you're supposed to choose, right?
And if I can ask you specifically about that, so you said it's okay if you want to be a mother, which obviously that is a personal choice. And I mean, bringing a child into the world and raising a child is a very honorable and difficult job. But you said it should be your choice and not the choice of your parents or the government. And I'm curious about, how does one know if it truly is her choice? Because what I can tell you, and the reason why I started with this question is because I have been saying motherhood was not my gig since I was a child. And it's not necessarily a huge amount of pressure, but often people try to convince you that you don't really know what you want. And they tell you that you can't quite really mean that. And I think when you are a woman who is clear that motherhood is not for you, you get to see at a very, very up close, intense level how much the narrative that if you are a woman, motherhood is your gig. You get it a lot. So I'm curious, and anyone can answer, not just Lilian or Niesha or Faye. I'm curious if you believe that it's possible to claim to desire motherhood just because you want it, without it really being, because let me tell you, it would have been a lot easier for me if I had a kid by the time I was 30. It would have been a lot easier in dating. It would have been a lot easier in family functions, in my professional life, if I just decided to have this baby to see if I liked it or not, right? So how can we discern if it truly is, I just want this, without all of the mesh? Because I'm from the West, that's supposed to be so progressive in these things, and I felt intense pressure. So can we discern if it really is a woman simply saying, I want this because I want it, if it's not mixed up with family pressure, societal pressure, governmental pressure at all?
That's a really hard question.
It is. It's loaded, right?
Can I?
Sure, go ahead.
I often say to my friend that if I want to have child, but I think the earth is super crowded already, and why couldn't I just adopt one? Like, that is from the true heart that I want to have one child, to give the child my love. But often I will have an answer like, it's different to have your own. And I think that's where, to address your question, like whether that is maybe partially addressed. Because the reason why people want to have their own, of course, there are some emotionally attached, but also one important element to that is that people want to see their descendant to alive in this world. The reason why for that is that I read some book about that people are having the desire to be immortal. They want to pursue to see themselves.
So it seems like it's sort of driven by your own, and I think again you're right. It's hard to sort of delineate. My own desire stops here, and now I'm bringing in parental. It's hard to delineate that, but it seems like what you're saying is there is an intrinsic desire, and that it could be mixed in with just the expectation of that's not necessarily a bad thing if it is mixed in with some expectations, some cultural acceptance to make that decision, that it's not necessarily a bad thing from a place to make that decision. Is that sort of what you're saying?
The difference between that you really want to be a mom, to me, from the pressure to be a mom, from you want to be a mom because of the social pressure, is that because I see that there are so many orphanages in the world, you could just adopt one, but it's not necessary to give birth to become a mom, and so if it is from social pressure, then maybe you want to have your own, because that is your own like upbringing.
It's your own flesh. And what do you think, Niesha?
I think that it comes down to being self-aware and understanding yourself and things like that. I don't think I want to have children at all, really, but I have had society and family issues that have affected me, and that decision, because I didn't necessarily have a good mom, and she was never able really to rise to the occasion to be a good mother, and that really did affect me. For a long time, I thought I didn't want to have kids because I didn't want to be a bad mom like my mom. Mm-hmm. So, but I know that, and I don't know, it just comes down to, being self-aware, I think. But yeah, I definitely think that you can and will be affected by, society and outside forces. It's just how it is, really.
I think there's also a lot of pressure to be like, with a lot of different things, but also, you have to make this decision now. Like, you have to have 100% clearly made up your mind, but a lot of the times it's not, people could change their mind, yeah, but that's not a reason to question my thoughts or how I feel right now. And why is it so difficult to accept this, this
Excellent
answer?
question, yeah.
And allowing people to be in their own space, to have their own, maybe I'm very sure, maybe I'm not so sure right now, and people change, and there's different stages people are at in their life. Yeah.
I appreciate your saying that there's another element to the expectation that you have to make the definitive choice now. And what is key, part of the reason why I like to talk about this and bring it up, although people think, it's the 21st century, nobody cares anymore, is because I do think one of the things that you said that infuriates me is I just said with my mouth words that came out of my brain, and you are questioning the words that came from my brain to my mouth. I could be saying right now, absolutely not. There is no such thing as Keturah being a mother, and I could say next year some different words, but why don't you let me own my words right now? And I think that is key, this idea that it's not even about to mother or not. It's about, why don't you trust my word about what I won't do with my womb? I think I should know that. And I think that's a key thing. I think it's a running through line through much of the conversation we're having today. Why is my word about what I want, my choices, questionable? Yeah.
What I do with my body.
Exactly, because if anything, you can question me about anything, but I think I kind of know what I want to do with this. I kind of know my mind. I kind of know my body. I think that's the one thing that you should be like, oh, word, okay, you said that. But still, it's not. Thank you very much for that. So we're going to move on now to the hot topic, Me Too. If you have no idea what that is, welcome back to Earth. You have been another planet for a while. Here is what I find intriguing about Me Too. So, particularly as it relates in the US, there'll be a huge thunderstorm. 175 actresses have accused Harvey Weinstein of sexual misconduct. 67 of those actresses have accused him of rape, and they have told the exact same story. That'll be the headline. And there'll be this huge flurry. The vast majority, at least from what my timeline says on social media, the vast majority cancel him. Oh my God, I can't believe it. And here is what deeply intrigues me. There will be a frightening number of people who have questions. And they will say something to the effect of, yes, I understand 175 women have made this accusation. What about the 3 that have not? What about that his wife has never made any accusations? It is absolutely baffling to me that voice, even though, again, in my observation, the voice is not as loud as the other voice, that voice still exists. So my first question is, I need someone to explain to me why that voice exists. Like, what do you think is behind that? We haven't heard from the other women. Let's wait till we hear more. What is behind that?
I think partially the stigmatization of sexual assault, sexual harassment. I can talk a little bit more about the situation in China. Me Too started beginning of 2018. And a lot of campaigns started running, started mostly with universities, and then eventually some celebrities were found out, et cetera, et cetera. And what you're saying, that voice is also present in China, where people say things like, oh, he's such a famous celebrity, famous MC, it's impossible he would do something so stupid, right? The rich guy is never at fault because he's high profile, and you know, obviously it's a setup, like, you know, and this voice is very strong, and people, and sexual harassment is complicated, and I don't think anyone has ever said it's not complicated. It is complicated, and people feel afraid to take a stance one way or the other, and they rather question and challenge the people who are survivors or victims of sexual assault, and yeah, it blows my mind.
Yeah.
I think that there's a few issues at play when that happens. The main thing is that, you know, historically, women's bodies are not their own. That we are all taught that women are supposed to be servitude to men, sexually and otherwise. So, of course, when something like that happens, the idea, you know, there's like an overarching idea that we are there for their sexual gratification. And then as well, we are also taught, or a lot of women and men in different societies, in my opinion, are taught that not to believe women, that we are overreacting, that just to always just kind of like question us and just to generally not believe what we have to say, and that a man's voice and opinion, it should be the ultimate, you know, final word and say.
Yeah. And again, we're just naturally liars. And I've heard, particularly when it's not necessarily sexual harassment, when it's accusations of rape, you get these very disturbing what ifs. The what if she really did want to have sex and now she's ashamed and she's embarrassed? What if she's searching for fame? And the absurdity in the what ifs are so breathtaking that, again, it gives me pause, because it's pretty much saying there is no possible way that these 175 women's words should just off top be given the same amount of power as the one man who stands to lose a lot from admitting he did this. It should not be as powerful as his word. And yeah, it also makes me wonder if people also don't understand the extremity of these problems in just everyday life. Like, we're talking about the celebrities, we're talking about the Harvey Weinsteins, the Bill Cosbys, R. Kellys. But if people understand that literally, for many women, part of how you navigate the workplace is how to deal with not just the male ego, but how to gently push off propositions and attention that you don't really want, but to do it in a way that you don't get yourself caught up, you don't sacrifice or compromise your own career. Like, you do think, generally speaking, people are aware that aside from the huge media cases, that in everyday life, this is part of women's everyday way of dealing with the world. Do you think people are aware of that? I guess maybe you can speak of China, in China.
I think it's growing. I think because of the Me Too movement, a lot of change is happening, and that's also why there's a lot of pushback from the government. But I think everyday women used to be less because people don't want to talk about it. And for me, at least, the more I start talking about sexual harassment, sexual assault to different women, the more I hear about other people having similar experiences, and I realize how common it is. You know, global average is 1 out of 3 women have experienced sexual violence, but it's probably higher in most countries. You know, and it's it's really awful. And I think there are more people talking about it now, and more people trying to question, why the statistics so high, why is this happening? But everything takes time. The anti-domestic violence law in China came out in 2016, and a lot of people don't know that there's a regulation on banning domestic violence at home, And so how can you look for help if you don't even know that is available to you? So education is a huge thing, and sexual education is a huge thing, which is not done very well in China either.
Sex education is not done very well in China?
There was a book that came out a few years ago that was kind of a very comprehensive sex education manual. But a lot of parents felt that it was too much, for kids at such a young age, and it actually got pulled back after a lot of controversy. And so it's not a mandated topic in most public schools. Some specific schools choose to do it because someone in faculty believes it's important, but it's a very individual basis. Most schools you probably won't see a lot of sex education. Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on what it said?
For me, sexual harassment, why it happens and why people arguing about why they don't believe in what women says. I thought of 2 reasons. One is that often when it happens, it's really blur sometimes. People mistaken it as a romantic scenario. But the most important thing is that so I need to talk a little bit about patriarchy, because the keyword in patriarchy is domination, power, having power over the other, and the reason why they have this lack of communication is that it gives some sort of authority or to have this shortcut of not asking for your permission, that I don't need your opinion, and even if you express your voice of no, but it's the ignorance of that is part of why many people say, oh, she didn't say no. Because it's not, many times it's not because she didn't say no, but
it's a situation. So again, I think what you're talking about, especially if it's harassment of a superior to a subordinate, it's the situation that she didn't say no to her immediate superior, who didn't outright force himself on her. But this idea of context and balance of power, if someone is being suggestive of hitting on you, how do you say no to the person who might be doing your performance review and trust that that no will be held as respected because she said no, and it won't necessarily influence your career, basically? That it's not the same as being at a bar and a guy comes on, you just say no. There's a power imbalance. There's a context for it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then the second one would be like, I feel many, especially maybe in China, I always thought there would be a cultural differences between China and Western, but then I don't really see the cultural differences in this topic that.
And it's funny, Faye and I talked about this for a good hour at Zapatas about last summer, and because one of the reasons I talked to her, because I personally thought there was just some major difference, like maybe our Eastern sisters have a different perspective, or maybe we're making something out of nothing, and Faye was like, no, same thing.
So one thing maybe I found that maybe that is cultural differences is like 面子, like the facial issues is super important in China culture, and a lot of times I think women in China say no in a very subtle way, that because they don't want to hurt the superficial conflicts, and so that, but it doesn't mean that the woman didn't say no, and that is but it's the lack of consent that which lead to this situation, and yeah, I would like to share like a part of my own history to illustrate why the 面子, like the facial issue, would influence how people deal with how complicated it is. So there was like one time that it happened with one of my colleagues, and he offered me condom and child-controlled pills that to offer me.
Let me pause for a second so I'm just make sure I'm understanding this right. So you had an incident where a colleague, not someone who is superior, but someone who is a coworker.
It's superior.
So superior offered you condom and birth control pills. In the context of what? Was it just sort of a conversation at the office, or?
No, it's so I just came into Shanghai, and I wanted to buy a super old second-hand bicycle, and so I asked in the office whether anyone want to tell me where can I buy them, because I know I cannot buy them on Taobao. So he offered me to help me because he knows how to find it, and he invited, but in return I need to cook for him, and so yeah, Then I was like, sure, why not? I need to return the favor. So that's where it happened at his apartment. Um, I'm not trying to like talk about the story, but I want to talk about the means, how it influenced like so after he offered, I said no, but I still find it shocking that I stayed and I finished the lunch quickly and then I left. And the reason why I thought that, like, why do I stay? Why I obviously super shocked already at that moment and scared and like panicked, don't know what to do. Like I still were thinking about, oh, I need to maintain the relationship of colleague and like I need to maintain the mianzi and I think that is a big part of the China culture and
First off, Lilian, you were shaking your head a lot when she was talking. Is there anything that you, yeah, nodding. I was going to be nodding. Is there anything you want to add, or that's what I'm, anything you want to add before I jump in to what she was saying? Okay. At the risk of sounding like I am dismissive of your comment, I just want to say something that you said struck me because you equated it to the cultural sort of expectation, or just women in China culturally, facial expressions may not be as expressive in saying, "I don't want this." But what you said is the exact same thing. I taught it in an all-girls school in New York City before moving abroad. What you just said is the exact same thing I have heard my students say who have been assaulted, who have had inappropriate grown men come on to them, because you're saying that because my facial expression maybe wasn't, and if I'm misinterpreting, please correct me. You're saying because my facial expression was kind of, maybe not matching my no, then that confused. Is that what you're saying?
no,
Okay.
I mean, because me it's like
Saving face. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I misinterpreted. My mistake.
yeah. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I feel like that's why I think it's a complicated thing that when people often like accuse that the victim that you didn't say no, but I'm sure that they said, but maybe that they were not screaming, but they're not fighting hard, but because it's not Chinese culture that is like to do that, to make a point that
And my thought is, I'm going to do a praise twerk when we get to the day where we ask the accused, well, couldn't you tell by her stiff body she wasn't into it? Couldn't you tell by the way that she didn't seem excited? Why weren't you checking for her body movements? Because it seems like there's a lot of the onerous and there's a lot of burden on the victim not to get herself harassed. So maybe she didn't say it loud enough. Maybe she didn't. I am aware when I'm making someone uncomfortable because I have something to lose, right? If I'm talking to someone because the thing about the joke about Americans is we share everything. We share everything almost immediately, right? If I'm talking to someone who's not from my culture and I start sharing too much, I can tell just by their body language, just by, oh, I need to be a little less Keturah. Because most adults can see that. So I wait eagerly for the day when we're having discussions like this, there is someone, or maybe a whole room that says, well, I don't understand why you didn't know she meant no. I don't understand why you couldn't tell by the way her body was still. Why weren't you looking for her body? Why weren't you looking for the volume at the no? How come you won't, as opposed to, Maybe she didn't say it loud enough, and, because she was trying to, when the onerous is on the perpetrator and not the victim. Because if you want to have a discussion about consent with a heterosexual male, why don't you ask him, when a man who identifies as homosexual, how do you know when you haven't given him consent? You expect him not to even look at you. You expect him not to flirt with you. So you understand what it means when someone is made to feel uncomfortable, when someone may not be receptive to your attention. Because when that is given to you in a context that you're not appreciative of, you're very clear on the signs that you have given that you didn't want it. So I appreciate what you're saying. I just wish we get to a day where the conversation is shifting. Because most people over the age of 21, 22 can read body language. And it's not necessarily, well, she didn't say it loud enough, or I just wish that the onerous was on them. But thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry you had to go through that. It seems like it would have been quite uncomfortable and frightening. So thank you for that. One of the things that I said to the women on the panel when I put this talk together was that I've gotten to a point where I realize that my personal choices are very political. Because when you say, I'm choosing not to have children, or I'm choosing to be involved in the trans or queer community, you figure it's my personal choice, it's no big deal. There was a time when I didn't speak about it much. There's a time when I didn't write about it much because it's just no big deal. I don't want to be married. I don't want to have children. Who cares? But then it occurred to me that the Congress in the United States exists to basically legislate my choices. So my saying, this is a personal choice, is a fallacy. I think every single personal choice we make, especially as women, is political. So I'm interested to see how you choose to live your life, choices that you make, particularly choices that don't fit into this very narrow binary construct of good womanhood, whether it's good Chinese womanhood, good Western womanhood, good black womanhood. Like, how have your choices, as you made them, sort of aligned to this idea that while it's a personal choice, in many ways it is quite political because it challenges the patriarchy and the system that exists on a hierarchy of needs and hierarchy of importance, places the importance of male needs over female needs. So how is your life, the personal life, very much connected to the political? Niesha, you want to start? All right.
I'll go. I want to give an example of personal being political. I think is your relationship with your body. So I grew up in a Chinese family. Both my parents are Chinese. And the first time I was given a diet pill, I was about 14 by my mom. And I had a lot of issues with eating, with my weight. I'm obviously tall. I don't know if you can see. I'm very tall for an Asian woman, and larger. And so I had a lot of issues growing up. And then I am also in a family of 3 sisters. So I'm the oldest. I have 2 baby sisters. They're old. They're like in their teens, but they feel like babies. But I watched them grow up, right? And then I watched them go through the same cycle that I went through. I watched my middle sister go from this really cute, chubby kid to, like, I could see her rib cage when she was showering. And it made me cry. And I think it is a very personal choice to embrace your body, right? And to take care of your body. And because it's affected, I feel like it affects a lot more women than we talk about also. Like, when I started working, most of the women, I work with a lot of, I've worked in Chinese companies in the past, and most of the women who are half my size are on diets, right? So, and it could be small things, right? I refuse to say I'm on a diet in public. I'm still self-degradatory sometimes in my home, but because I feel like to say the word I'm on a diet is some kind of like trigger to other people. It could be a trigger to other people, that this is the beauty standard, right? And it's just, yeah. I feel like even though it seems like a small thing, I think it does make a huge impact. And then eating disorders and a lot of these issues that are very gendered as well. And it's crazy, I think, because you meet these beautiful women or beautiful people who don't think they're beautiful, and it's so sad, I think, that people can't see themselves as beautiful. So I think that is a personal but political choice.
Extremely political.
For me, I'm not the most political person when it comes to like, I guess I would say like when I think of politics, I think like
Running for senator or something like.
yes, or something like that. I don't necessarily do things like that. I kind of believe that representation is important. And when I think about how I've lived my life and how that has affected people around me or, inspired whoever, I think that I just try to live my life the way I want to live it. And that's just all I got. I can't be living for anyone else out here because everyone has like an opinion of how they want to live and things like that. And I think once we do, you do what you need to do for yourself, and then that also, of course, like affects change and things like that. And yeah, that's.
And I mean, is there a way that you think you have fought back against the message of what womanhood is, of what it means to be a woman? And is there any way that you fought against that? Because you say, I just live my life and I can't be worried about what people are telling me.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot when I think of like, how I dress, the things that, how I live my life. It's not where I'm from. I'm the only. There's no coming here, even living abroad the way I do. It's not something that little black girls from Cleveland, really do. And different things I've had, issues with like family members or, things like that about how I treat my body or whatever, and, the things that my grooming habits or, the fact that I am, a gay woman and things like that. So, yeah, there's definitely been a lot, and I've had some pushback from mainly family members. I don't really concern myself with society.
That's a big one, society.
Yeah, so the thing I will say though, I feel like as I've gotten older, I've had like an issue with like workplace stuff, and I'm having this issue, or I had this issue where I'm like, I'm wanting to be a little bit less cookie cutter, or I want to do things my own way, and working in certain environments like ESL or whatever, it's just like you have to really conform, and I'm just not really down with conforming, so that has really pushed me to do things a different way and to just like have to really carve out my own path more, because I want to have a certain type of lifestyle that isn't conducive to that way.
For me, because we are living in a society that is like well connected to political decision, so I feel there are many things that you couldn't see, but your personal choice is formed by the political influences. And for example, so the word leftover woman, that is identified as a new word by the China Education Department in 2000.
Wait, say it again? It's identified. Like put in the dictionaries. That's sort of what it. Leftover woman. That's like an official.
In 2006, and there are like a very popular like a TV show. It's called You Are the One. That is to have a line of either a girl or a male that they are gonna like a blind matching show that is really popular in China with over 5 million viewers. Like a lot. I don't remember the exact number. And so I feel like the media, they are like somehow, maybe they're not intentional to do that, but it's definitely like a mainstream.
I'm sorry.
Popular.
They're very intentional, sweetie. People spend a lot of money to get ads placed. It's not. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so like these the same topic of TV show has been really, really popular. Everyone is talking about it, about the show, but like they are happily talking about it, and they are happily identify themselves as leftover women. And why? Because I just like they're not aware of what the like
The patriarchy. Exactly.
So I feel being identifying that the definition of level women is the women who are unmarried, who are over 27.
I thought it was 30. It's 27. Oh, they didn't lower the age too. I'm leftover, warmed over. I'm way left. They left me a long time ago. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I feel to just identify yourself, I'm not gonna defined by you. That is a personal thing, but also political.
And I'm glad I didn't put that on our list of questions because I didn't know how much y'all want to tell y'all business. But none of us are married either. For me, it's definitely a choice, just not a structure that works for me. But I'm just curious. We haven't talked about the whole marriage thing. And I'm blown away. I thought it was 30. Now they didn't drop it to 27. In the year of the pig, if you are not 27, you left over. I'm like, shoot, you still in grad school. But anyway, I mean, how does walking through the world of China, the world of the micro world of your family and friends and office, and the macro world of just life in China or abroad, how is it to walk? Do you mind my asking your age? To walk, how old are you, Lilian?
27.
Okay, I thought so. You're like 25, 26, right?
No, I'm 30.
What? We'll talk later about your moisturizer. I just had, and Niesha, you're early 30s somewhere. All right. So sorry, y'all left over. Sorry. I'm sorry about that. I didn't say it. I'm just a messenger, right? So how is it to walk through your life being in your late 20s, early 30s, and as far as I know, no one sent me an invitation to a wedding, so there's no dude in the horizon. How does it feel walking through this life unmarried with the sort of still expectation, some would say even pressure, to be considering that? What is that like, being unmarried in this point in time, in the year of the pig, to be left over?
Well, I find it like I find it a little bit offensive for my parents. Actually, they're trying to they want the best for me, and that's what they believe in their whole life, and it's their own value system, and I respect them. And I think it's the way they express that they love me that's to help me to find a husband. So I find it difficult to change something of that, because it's if you deny them, it seems like you are denying their whole life. That's what they live for.
This is disrespectful to your parents.
And so I would just actually not fighting with them, like not arguing with them, but I will live my own life, but just I wouldn't be arguing with them every day and trying to persuade them I'm right, because that is their choice and this is my choice, and everyone should be respected.
Well said. Got anything?
People used to ask me, "Oh, when did you graduate?" And now people ask me, "Do you have kids?" And that feels weird because I feel pretty much the same person. And I think the pressure is mostly from my family, for me personally. They ask about having a partner every time I go see them. But it's such a like drastic change because like before 18, it's like no dating, no dating, no dating. And then
And
all of a sudden,
magically, husband.
husband, have babies. And it's just this drastic, you're supposed to like, you know,
Wow.
make this change so quickly. And they never talked about sex. They never talked about dating or like what it is like. My
Really?
dad
Yeah.
once wrote me a list, a criteria of what to find in a good man. It was very helpful.
That was very nice of him. Very thoughtful.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What's on the list? We need to know.
I honestly don't remember anymore. But I feel stressed when I go home, and I love my parents and I love my family a lot, but it kind of deters me from going home, just so that I don't have to deal with that stress. If I feel like I don't have the mental capacity right now, I might choose not to go home, which sucks. Sorry, Mom.
I won't tell her.
But yeah, we have like there are a lot of articles like I've read on how to deal with, in Chinese we say 催婚, like people who are parents who are pushing you to get married. And one of the strategies, there were many strategies. There's actually great articles out there. One of the strategies is cry. Every time they bring it up, just bawl and be like, it's really sad. I really want to, or
Simple, practical. Yes.
and then eventually they'll, not want you to cry. So, there are different ways to go about it.
I think as Western women, there's a belief that the pressure is lessened from an American perspective. What do you think, Niesha, there is some level of that same sort of, even though we don't have a word for it, you are a leftover woman because you are X amount of age. And I think in my head, I thought it was like 30. Do you think there is still some sort of stigma or some sort of underlying messaging, even as a Western woman?
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I think it can also be depending on where you're from the Midwest, or I think I hear similar things from my friends who might be from different places in the South of America, whatever, down south. For me, maybe it's a blessing. I haven't felt that from my family, but it's like self-imposed for me, having like envy, looking at other people being like, I'm in my 30s now, so like I need to like, yeah, it's like a checklist. I need to like figure this out and have a life partner and do this and do that. But thankfully, I guess I haven't necessarily felt the pressure from my family necessarily. But there's definitely that pressure, even if you are from the West, like it's definitely.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah.
Oh, I want to add one thing also. It's legal to ask you whether or not you are married or plan to have kids in an interview in China.
Nah, you wait, hold up.
Yeah, it's legal. I've been asked that personally.
Really?
Yeah.
And I've seen like, what is that?
I've only had one job since I've been here. So.
Yeah. They don't want you to have a pregnancy while you're working because it wastes money essentially, so.
Oh wow. So then, yeah, it definitely it follows you everywhere. If you're on a job interview and someone can ask you that, then it's not something you can just sort of say it's no big deal, because it's always something that you have to consider or think about. Wow. I'd heard that, but I didn't realize that was really a law. I'd heard that people have asked it, but I didn't know it was necessarily legal to do that.
I've also been asked for my height, my weight, my zodiac sign. No, my
Zodiac
horoscope,
sign.
my horoscope, zodiac sign, blood type.
All righty. We're going to wrap up with the big finish. Another easy question, Lilian. So I think a lot of people, like Niesha was saying, I don't really live my life politically, because when I think of politics, I think about going and joining a protest, and I'm not a protest kind of girl. I think a lot of people believe to dismantle the isms, to dismantle all of the systems that have held groups of people back for a while, that you have to do something big. You have to become a world-known feminist speaker. You have to run for office on the platform of gender equality. That is how you smash the patriarchy. But the reality is, most of us got jobs. Most of us like watching our TV shows. And most of us ain't gonna do that. We're not going to run for office. If we're being 100%, if the protest happens in winter, I'm not gonna be there. I will donate some money, I will tell my friends, but I might not be there. So I think there's a perception that in order to dismantle any ism, in order to evoke real change, you have to do something big. But I am a believer that every single person, in ways they don't even realize, are contributing to, whether they're intentional or not, they're contributing to dismantling that ism. So when it comes to patriarchy being defined as the needs, this is a very loose definition, the needs and desires of those who identify as male being placed at a higher level than those who are not. And it implies systems in place to benefit and leverage that group over the other. How in the very much granular day-to-day dealings in your life, how do you just take, not even a hammer, maybe you take a little safety pin and just pop a little hole in the patriarchy? How you do that? Because we need a little cheat sheet.
I guess I do it with the work that I do, the content that I create. Huh? I guess I do it in the work that I do, the content I create. That's how I don't know. I guess that's how I do it. I mean, you do it in your everyday life, I guess. And, by supporting things that are important to you, by illuminating things that are important to you, and giving voices, and if you can. One thing that I tried to do, for instance, when I was one thing that I tried to do, like for instance, when I was working at this magazine, I tried to get like as many like people of color working and writing for me as freelancers, and writing about certain stories, and putting people on in that way. And yeah, so that's like one example.
Thank you, Master Niesha.
I think there are these unwritten laws of what it means to be a feminist sometimes. Like, if you don't attend this event, you are a bad feminist. Like,
My show was on.
Or if you don't
I'm sorry, my show was on. I can't come.
If you don't do this protest, or there are all these expectations, and you feel like, oh no, I'm a bad feminist now. I'm wearing this shirt. It says in Chinese, 女权主义者长这样. This is what a feminist looks like, which is designed by a feminist activist in China. And that's the statement that feminists are diverse, and we all have different things we like to do, that we have our strengths in, and it could be as simple as listening to someone and being a shoulder to cry on, and listening to a story, sharing that connection or that moment with someone. I feel like when I started doing activism in China, I didn't have some grand scheme. I'm going to take over Shanghai, and
What? You didn't have a business plan to take over?
Every project kind of was discovered in part of the process, and what I thought was needed, or what I thought would benefit the community most. Like especially working with trans organizations. We set up the first trans organization in Shanghai in 2017, so quite recent. And we had the first trans pride in Shanghai just last year in June.
Congrats.
So, yeah, thank you. And it's not like an end-all be-all, but it's a great first step to building the community. For me, that's what I can do. I can organize, I can make Excel sheets, and so that's what I do. And it might not be the forte of someone else, but that's okay. You know, I'm very into kind of like organic teams. I don't know how well it's worked so far, but it is working. So yeah, I think everyone can do something. And even if you think something, it could be insignificant, it could change a lot for someone else.
For me, is would be just learn to read more, to find out more about it, because I actually, before I joined Lady Fest, I know nothing that I know right now. I have no idea of my own history, like what were the women was like in the past, like what does it mean, like why they talk about Confucius, why is Confucianism is like how why is still prevailing in China, like I don't know all of those stuff, but I read a lot about those, and those are not being talked about. It's not written in our history book when we're studying in primary school. Like we don't talk about those things, and to be having those knowledge, I think to share with others, that is already a huge part of how, to me, is how I contribute. And I think everyone could do that. And sometimes people have conflicts, that especially when they're like saying that you're not inclusive, and why do you want to dominate man?
That's a lot of work. I'm exhausted just thinking about dominating anybody. Ain't nobody trying to dominate
But
me.
then
Yeah.
I think the reason why they have these thoughts, like they're furious that they're furious that they're hearing the word of feminism at the beginning, at the first place, so they get angry and they're not listening. So I think the everyone could do is just like Lilian
Just
said,
learn.
listen to what others said, and maybe in a more peaceful way, or maybe I'm just being Chinese.
And it's perfectly fine that you're being Chinese. There's no need to put a maybe there. That's who you are. Who else would you be? So, can we give a round of applause to our panelists? Thank you, Faye. Thank you, Lilian. Thank you, Niesha. A really important conversation, and I'm sure I speak for the audience